I wanted to bring today's episode to the podcast talking about weight loss and how that impacts the fertility journey. We're talking about some strategies to take from a biochemical standpoint, because many times we think, the weight loss or the inability to lose weight is our fault. So we're talking about some biochemical imbalances and then also the mental, emotional side of this as well. So excited for you to listen to this episode. I regularly speak with 5 to 10 couples per week who are struggling to have their baby. And although we want to help everyone, we only have 4 spots available per month to work with us. I would like to invite you and your partner to a Supercharge Your Fertility Discovery Call. And this call is for you if you meet at least one of these criteria. You've been trying to get pregnant for at least 2 years. You've been through at least one failed IUI or IVF. This calls for action takers. If you're not ready and you wait, the risk is you'll need to wait 2 to 3 months for a spot to open up. If you're seriously considering working with us, go to Fab Fertile, F-A-B Fertile, and click on Book a Free Call. That's Fab Fertile, F-A-B Fertile, and click on Book a Free Call. Then you'll be all booked in and ready to spend 30 minutes to give you the action plan to getting pregnant naturally. One theme that keeps coming up with the couples in our Fab Fertile Couples Coaching Program is sleep. Whether it's insomnia, having a hard time falling asleep, waking up at night, or feeling tired when we wake up, sleep is critical for fertility and hormones. And that's why I'm so excited to have Blue Blocks as our podcast sponsor. So we're exposed to blue and green light from our phones, our tablets, our computers, indoor lights, and more. And this exposure impacts our melatonin production. And melatonin is essential for both female and male fertility. It helps determine the frequency and duration of our cycle and impacts sperm. There's lots of blue light blocking glasses on the market, but the ones from Blue Blocks, they've actually compared other popular brands, and Blue Blocks block 100% of blue and green light, while other brands fall short. So I have their sleep glasses. They have red lenses, and the ones I have are a little translucent frame, and they're so stylish and really cool. And so they eliminate 100% of the blue and green light in the 400 nanometer to 550 nanometer range. So this is the exact range that has been shown in clinical studies to disrupt melatonin and negatively impact your sleep. So all you do is wear your sleep glasses after sunset until it's time for bed, and you'll notice improved sleep after just one use. And it's also cool to use when you're flying for managing jet lag. I got to say, I was a little skeptical about the noticing improvement after one use, but literally I use these glasses and my sleep is actually already pretty good. I used them for one day, and I have to say, after one day, I had the best sleep of my life. I just felt so rested. So these glasses, they ship free and they're tracked for all orders anywhere in the world. And also they have all their frames come in prescription, non-prescription, and reading glasses. Plus you can send in your frames and they'll add the blue light blocking and green light blocking lenses to your frame. So this is an easy hack that you can add to your fertility toolkit. All you do is go to BlueBlocks, BlueBlocks.com. Use the coupon code GetPregnantPodcast at checkout and receive a 15% discount. That's BlueBlocks, BlueBlocks.com, and use the coupon code GetPregnantPodcast to receive your 15% discount. Hey there. Thanks so much for listening to the Get Pregnant Naturally podcast. And I've got a favor to ask you. If you are enjoying learning about the functional approach to fertility, consider going to iTunes and rating and reviewing the podcast. This is how it helps the show reach more people that are struggling with infertility, knowing that there's another approach that really can get to the bottom of why it's not working in the first place. So all you need to do is, if you're on the app or the desktop, just go in and consider leaving a 5-star rating and leave a review. And there is step-by-step instructions in the show notes showing you exactly how to do that. So if you can just take a few minutes, just take the few minutes right now. You can pause this recording, come back, leave the review. It would really mean the world to me and help others that are on the fertility journey as well. Take care. I didn't need to go to donor eggs. Obviously, I don't regret it. I have beautiful children. I could have done things differently, restored. I was still cycling back in my 20s. I could have looked at my health, the environmental toxins, the stress I was under.
Many women are being told their eggs are too old. That's often merely an assumption that's not based on actual evidence. The reason being that there is no direct test of egg quality. You can't test egg quality.
It's the man who's got a food sensitivity or he has a zinc deficiency.
Like, there can be a root cause to these symptoms that are, quote unquote, period problems, that the doctor will pass you a pill without any question of why.
And some part of you knows that if you can reframe your journey from not want to struggle, or if it is struggle, learn how to embrace the struggle. Learn how to embrace it.
Most conditions in the child occur during the 9 months of development. It's the genetic switches are turned on or turned off, and they're pre-programmed. So you are in such a powerful, amazing position to do amazing things for your kids.
You know, why is IVF the first step? Because we believe it should be the last step. Welcome to Get Pregnant Naturally, where functional medicine and natural fertility solutions will help you get pregnant and have your baby. Hey there, I'm Sarah Clark, founder of Fab Fertile and your host. I believe the functional approach is the first step for anyone struggling with infertility, and my aim is to help you get pregnant naturally. Today, I'm welcoming Justine Altman back to the podcast, and we're digging into how to optimize weight during the fertility journey. Definitely check out episode number 6 for a functional medicine 101 talk, plus a look at some of the tools we use to help couples conceive. Justine is part of my team here at Fab Fertile. She is our nutrition director, and she is an integral part of our couples coaching program, which uses functional lab testing, diet, and lifestyle changes to dramatically improve the chances of conception. So if you're struggling on the fertility journey, your body is desperately trying to tell you something, and focusing on your health will either help you get pregnant naturally, or if you do need to go to the fertility clinic, it will improve your chances of success. Thanks so much for listening. I'm so thankful that you're here. Make sure you hit subscribe. And if you know someone else who is on the fertility journey, please share this podcast with them. Hey, Justine, excited to have you back on the podcast.
Hey, Sarah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Today, we are digging into weight and really how the functional approach and really specifically our Fab Fertile method can help with that. And so we'll just kind of give some stats here a little bit on weight and how it's tied with fertility. And like a lot of this stuff is obviously, if you could lose the weight, you already would have done it. It's, you know, you potentially have done diets and tried all sorts of different things. Perhaps nothing has worked. Maybe it stayed off for a little while. You may have gone to the clinic and been told that, okay, wait, in order for us to do a treatment, you have to lose weight, which, you know, like that's like, to me, like discrimination. And I don't know, there's a whole sort of thing going on here. Obviously with like our take from a functional standpoint is, you know, is there inflammation? And if sometimes we see what people are eating, I'm like, oh my goodness, sometimes people are hardly even eating anything. And, but the body is still holding on to the weight. So I'll just kind of give a few stats here as it relates to fertility. And so it can be hormonal imbalance, which impacts ovulation. It's common with PCOS. And these are some stats here with IVF. So a higher BMI or body mass index can negatively impact IVF success with pregnancy related complications. BMI is higher than 25, can miscarry at a higher rate. The American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists said babies born to obese women with a BMI of 30 or greater have an increased risk of having birth defects such as heart defects and neural tube defects. And also for male fertility, so it's not just female, men, obesity associated with lower testosterone, impaired sperm quality, as well as higher rate of erectile dysfunction. Yeah, so some of those are you know, not really great to hear, and so today we wanted to give you some hope and really have you look at this completely differently. And this is all about, like, as many times we blame ourselves for this weight that we can't get rid of. And so what's your take, Justine?
Yeah, you know, so when we have some extra weight that we're hanging on to, it's not just about like eat less and exercise more, right? And that's sort of the traditional advice. But, you know, the weight itself is sort of an indication that we've got some inflammation going on in the body. So it's not necessarily, you know, when we talk about these stats about, you know, a higher BMI leads to a higher incidence of birth defects and not as good success rates with IVF. It's not just about the weight itself. It's sort of about what the weight is representing, right? Or what in the body is not allowing us to lose the way that we want to. And like you said, you know, we talk to people a lot of times and they're not overeating, they're undereating in a lot of cases. And so that just goes to prove, you know, it's not just about food intake or eating junk foods, right? It's about something else that's going on in the body that needs to be uncovered, that needs to be unraveled a bit so that we can get the body just sort of humming along, everything working the way that it needs to. And what we see a lot of times is that weight just starts to fall off if we get some of the inputs right.
Yeah, it's like that side effect of, wait a minute, you start looking at all these, you know, different pillars of movement, sleep, the right, you know, personalized diet for you, managing that mental emotional stress. And then as we start to do these things, then the weight starts to come off, even just having the support of someone helping you through this journey, because there can be, a lot of triggers and mental emotional stress, and sort of to see what you do in times of stress. And maybe for you, there's something back from childhood, whatever it is, that for you, food was comfort, and that's where you kind of head to. And once you have that support, those sort of things, it starts to, as I say, a side effect. The weight comes off. So let's talk about BMI. This has been around for years, but there's some big flaws with this BMI, so body mass index.
Yeah, BMI, it calculates your height and your weight, and that's it, right? And so it has nothing to do with how much muscle you have on your body, right? And so, for example, I have a sister who is very, very muscular, and her BMI appears that she's leaning toward the unhealthy range, when in reality, she's one of the healthiest people I know, and she's very fit, but she's got a lot of muscle on her. And so, BMI just really doesn't take into account sort of all of the things going on. And so, when I'm talking to clients, if weight is a concern, we talk more about body fat percentage. That tends to be a better sort of measurement of whether or not there's enough fat on the structure that's sort of impacting, having a negative impact on our health and on our fertility.
Yeah, because muscle's weighing more than fat, as you said, and then you can have someone who's that skinny fat. I really
exactly
like fat, but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, it doesn't take into consideration age, sex, fat mass, muscle mass, race, genetics, medical history. None of that is considered.
Or bone structure, for that matter.
Yeah.
Some of us have heavier bones.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about, someone that's tried everything to lose weight, where would we start? First of all, like when we start with our Fab Fertile Method, we're doing the Elimination Diet, and it's for both you and your partner. So you're taking out the top allergens. So dairy, gluten, soy, corn, peanuts, and eggs, and processed sugar. You take those out for 10 days. It's not about you, drinking green juice and starving. It's eating, wild caught fish and grass-fed meat and mostly veggies. And you can do some starches in there too. But we find that people's energy and mood, and then also, lo and behold, weight loss, that inflammation starts to come off. What's your take there?
Yeah. When we first start to talk about food and nutrition with folks, it has a lot less to do, or, our weight has a lot less to do with how much we're eating and more about what we're eating, right? So if we're eating foods that we have sensitivity to, or that tend to be inflammatory for most people, right? So sugar and alcohol, and dairy and grains for a lot of people, especially gluten, that those things, they just cause so much inflammation on the body that the body's it's spending so much of its energy just trying to sort of manage that inflammation as it's continually coming into our body, that it's struggling to do other things like detoxify and actually start to use up some of that weight that we've been carrying around. And so what we find is that if we get the right foods going on, that has so much more of an impact than the amount of food, right? And so we're not talking calorie counting. We're talking just focusing on a nutrient-dense diet.
Yeah, not counting calories, counting chemicals.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then the food sensitivity piece. So it's interesting because many of us, like this was me for years, like with this little belly, but it was like bloated. And my mom had one, like my I'm tall and thin. That's just my makeup. So are my parents. And my mom always had this little pot belly, as she'd call it, like bloated. Didn't know I was really bloated. I was just like, why? And it would go down, and then it would end towards the end of the day. So always this bloating. And then as I addressed these food sensitivities, then that little muffin top bloating thing went away. And so that sometimes the body, with the inflammation piece, it could be holding on to something like that. And then again, even with bloating, appearing larger than what you actually are.
Yeah, absolutely. I hear women talk all the time about their 5 months pregnant belly, right? When what they're talking about is bloating. And how you describe it, Sarah, is how we hear it from just about everyone. It's right. Like it's low in the morning, and as the day progresses, it sort of gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And that really does mean that we've got some kind of challenge in the gut, or we've got a food that is really bothering our system. And so when that happens, when we eat foods that are bothering our system, and a lot of times we don't know, right? We don't know what foods we're sensitive to. And that's why we always do food sensitivity testing with folks, is because it's, if the bloating is there, a significant part of every day, it's really hard to pinpoint which foods are contributing to that bloating. But ultimately, when that bloating is going on, it's uncomfortable. It doesn't make us feel good about ourselves. And it's a goofy thing. We're uncomfortable and we feel bloated and we feel like our belly is big. But still, because we've been taught that food is such a good source of comfort, we still reach for another snack, basically, right? And it makes the bloating worse. And essentially, the only thing that resolves it is going to sleep for the night, and magically we wake up a little less bloated in the morning.
Yeah, it's interesting with that whole belly thing too. Like with so many of us are walking around, contracting our stomachs, trying to make everything flat. With the belly breathing, and then the whole the spiritual side of things, being able to let that go a bit. I don't know, that just kind of came to me because it's interesting. For years, I'd be like, oh my goodness, I gotta suck this in. And then, lo and behold, when I addressed all these gut issues and food sensitivities, I didn't have to do that. But it's interesting how that contraction piece there around the stomach, and then especially trying to conceive, how do we open up that area to receive, our child?
Yeah. And it comes from that idea that our weight is our fault. Right. Or that the bloating is our fault. And in reality, right, there's these things going on under the hood. If we've got food sensitivities or if we've got other imbalances in the body, it doesn't matter how hard or how much you restrict your calories or how much you exercise. Sometimes it's really hard for that weight to come off if we don't have the biochemistry right. And so, in that sucking it in, right, that's about us being in a lot of ways embarrassed, right? That we've let ourselves get that way, when in reality, the eat less and the exercise more, it isn't the whole formula. It's maybe part of the picture for some people, but there's a whole lot else going on, and it's not your fault.
Yeah. And so we specialize with low AMH and high FSH and premature ovarian insufficiency or failure and diminished ovarian reserve. And we just did a masterclass actually last night, asking the question, who's experiencing mood swings, who feels hangry, and who's feeling kind of that cranky, irritable piece. And literally there was, hundreds of people on this masterclass, and it was like a stream of people, me. And that was me as well. Literally, my blood sugar would be crashing all day long. And I'd be like, I need to eat, and super hangry. And, it wasn't balanced. And then I would grab literally whatever was there because I thought I was going to pass out. I think you had a similar experience too. And then that, you're grabbing the wrong thing. And then it's just that cycle keeps going on. And then here you go. And you've gained extra weight. What's your take on the blood sugar piece?
Yeah, that is such a vicious cycle, right? It's like when we're crashing, we constantly grab for something that's going to make our blood sugar go higher, right? Because that's what we need in that moment, is for our blood sugar to come back up. But inevitably, we tend to grab something that makes our blood sugar go too high, which then, the body compensates and overcompensates, and our blood sugar dips again. And we find ourselves in that same spot again a couple hours later. And that's it's that roller coaster with blood sugar imbalance is such a massive stressor on the body. And it comes in most cases from an overconsumption of sugar or carbohydrates in general. So, anything that's white typically, right? So the white bread or the pasta and things like that tend to really spike our blood sugar and cause this sort of permanent imbalance to start to set in. And when that happens, the body really does a nice job of converting sugars to fat, right? And so the extra sugar or carbs that's in our diet, our body wants to store that as fat. And it's part of an adaptive trait that our bodies have, right? So, back, generations and generations ago, when food was more scarce, right, it was beneficial for us to store weight in that way so that we had extra reserves to draw from if there were hard times, if there was famine.
So the next one we have is the gut health. And I don't think, we've talked about this a lot on the podcast, and it's maybe getting a little more mainstream, but not even, the whole microbiome and optimizing, if there's gut infections, and optimizing your gut health can then help with weight loss. Can you talk about that one for us?
Yeah, so if you think about it, everything that fuels our body, everything that happens in our body, every muscle that contracts, it all has to come from the nutrients that we take in from our diet, right? And so we want to have a good, healthy diet that's got lots of nutrients in it, but also the state of our gut plays a giant role, right? Because if our gut is having any dysfunction from, bacteria that are there that aren't supposed to be there, or parasites or yeast, or any of those things, then we've got a gut that isn't able to absorb all the nutrients from our food because it's not able to digest 100%. Those gut infections, they steal our nutrients sometimes, and they give off byproducts that are toxic to us, which do further damage to the gut. It also is part of what makes us bloated when we eat food. It essentially, anything that's sort of imbalanced in the gut has this sort of cascading effect out to every other part of the body. Right. And so when there's dysfunction in the body, that's one of the times when the body really wants to hold on to weight. And it plays a role with toxins as well, where our body just doesn't want to lose weight if we're holding on to toxins. Right. And so if the gut is slow, then we're not moving out toxins as fast. Right. So if we've got any level of constipation, it means that those toxins that were in our waste that the body wanted to get out instead are being reabsorbed into the body. And our bodies store the majority of toxins in our fat cells. It's the safest place for our body to store them. And so the body knows if there's anything going on with the gut, because we've got an imbalanced microbiome with some of those infections in the gut, or we've got any other, so slowness, it's called slow motility, and we've got any level of constipation going on, then the body knows like, okay, there are too many toxins. We can't get rid of all of them right now safely. So let's just hold on to them in our fat cells. That's the safest way to keep them. And that's one of the things that makes it really challenging to lose any weight, is that your body is in its own wisdom knowing that it's unsafe for you to lose weight right now.
Yeah. And all that impacts our hormones too.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And so thyroid, this is something that we see a lot. I've talked before, probably like everyone, maybe we'll say 99% of the people we work with have got something going on with their thyroid. And then either it's, hypothyroidism, subclinical thyroid issues, so it's the liver or the gut, or Hashimoto's, and then thyroid health and, hypothyroidism, which also can be, again, we're supporting couples with, POI and POF and DOR and low AMH and high FSH. They can also potentially have these thyroid issues, which we've got people sort of telling us, oh, wait, I've got this extra 10 pounds. It just kind of came around from nowhere when I was playing around with you working with your physician may have got a hypothyroidism diagnosis, and then now playing around with a medication, which can take a while, and then maybe not doing those targeted diet and lifestyle changes. Can you just talk about the thyroid and how that impacts weight?
Yeah, of course. So the thyroid, we see this all the time, but it is the master metabolism controller of the body, right? It's what controls what our burn rate is, how fast we burn through nutrients. And we don't want to have a fast metabolism or a slow metabolism. We always talk about sort of in mainstream, that having a fast metabolism would be great. In reality, we don't want that either. We want it to be balanced because we don't want to burn through all of our vitamins and minerals too quickly and be depleted. But at the same time, we want our metabolism to be fast enough that we're not sort of constantly in this sluggish zone. And that's what happens when the thyroid is a little bit on the weak side. And the thyroid gets weak for all sorts of reasons, right? So if we've got food sensitivities, if we've got toxins built up in the body, if we've got, mental, emotional, spiritual stress, all of those things have an impact on the thyroid. And when the thyroid is impacted and weak, it's nearly impossible to get to an optimal weight because our metabolism is just so slow. Our body is saying, wait a minute, the stress is high. Again, if we think of our bodies as these sort of primitive beings, it's being wise and saying, okay, stress is high, which means there's potential for danger, which means we want to slow down our burn rate so that we conserve our vitamins and minerals, right? Just like how, if you were stranded on an island and you've only got 2 days worth of food, you conserve your food, right? You don't eat it all on the first day. You conserve it instead. And that's the same thing that our body does, that our thyroid does. It intentionally lowers itself, makes itself sort of, on low battery mode, like your phone would do, in order to conserve those vitamins and minerals, in order to make sure that you have potential to survive, to weather the storm, whatever that may be. And of course, your body it recognizes any kind of stress as a potential danger, whether it's job stress or relationship stress or stress from, unhealthy foods or stress from not getting enough sleep or getting, not enough or too much exercise. Your body perceives all of those things as a threat to your safety.
What about the birth control pill, hormonal birth control pill and weight gain? That can actually, and some of the hormone too, trying to balance the hormones. Sometimes people are, gaining weight there when they're on, I'm not sure HRT of what you're seeing there, but maybe with the pill for sure. It's, some people just have an adverse reaction where they gain this. It's interesting where they talk about the college 15, but then if a lot of women are going on the birth control pill when they go to college. Is it that, or the fact they've gone on the pill? I don't know. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think there's a good chance that is a significant proportion of that freshman 15 that we hear about. Yeah. Because the timing is you're right, it's very correlated. And we tend to find for a lot of people, it's not for everyone, the pill sort of treats everyone a little differently, but we hear a lot of reports of 10 or 15 pounds going on almost instantly after people get on the pill. Yeah. And it really is because, it interferes with the body's natural workings, right? So our bodies, we have, more than 60 hormones flowing through our body. And it's this complex system where everything is connected, right? And every hormone talks to every other hormone, and they all tell the body all the things it's supposed to be doing. And the birth control pill is so powerful that it really interferes, and it literally disconnects some signals from the brain to the reproductive organs, right? And so when that happens, it's like suddenly we have a breakdown, right? That there are messages that aren't getting through. And so sort of everything just sort of goes haywire. And it can happen for different reasons for different people. But yeah, we absolutely see if the hormones are out of balance, and the birth control pill can be one source of that imbalance, then for a lot of people, we tend to start to put on some weight.
Yeah, because we have on our health history, how did you feel on the birth control pill? And sometimes many people don't even notice that, oh, wait a minute, all of a sudden, I became more anxious on the pill, or I was more depressed. And you just think it's situational. But wait a minute, I've just taken this, this pill, which then is causing all these different adverse reactions in the body. And you go off it, and it's like, oh, okay, now I feel back to myself. And we sometimes don't even make that connection for years and years. I was on the pill, like many of our clients we work with for years, because it was the first line of defense. Oh, wait, I have irregular cycles. Here you go on the pill. Didn't get to the root cause. And then when I came off, the issues were still there. So sort of definitely that Band-Aid approach. And then in this case, if it's adding with weight gain, it's something to see, well, wait a minute, is that the right approach for you? And then for heavy metals and other toxins, how is that related with weight loss? What's your take on that one?
Yeah, again, it's this phenomenon where the body tends to store metals and other toxins in our fat cells, right? And so your body knows, like, if we're not able to move all these toxins out fast enough, right? So if we've got some gut issues or some constipation, or if we've got, some like lymph tissue that's a little clogged up, and, we talk about like with our even like clogged pores, it's the same kind of thing, right? Our lymph that's right under our skin, and our skin can even be clogged. And our skin is our largest detox organ, right? So our liver is our sort of most vital detox organ, but our skin is our largest one. And moving things out through our gut is the way that we get rid of most of our toxins. And so if the body sort of assesses that any of those detox pathways are not functioning at 100%, they're not moving as fast as they're supposed to, or there are blockages, then our body knows, like, okay, we can't get rid of all these toxins right now. There just aren't enough pathways, right? It's sort of a bottleneck. And so our bodies decide to hang on to them in our fat cells. And it knows that if those fat cells shrink, or if those fat cells die off, then it's going to liberate those toxins, and we can't move those out. That has potential to be dangerous for us. And so our bodies intentionally, while our detox pathways are blocked, prevents us from losing weight, or at least prevents us from getting to the optimal weight we're looking for. Yeah.
When we're doing hair tissue mineral analysis testing, we can see in the test there where, those heavy metals are showing up. And, so then we help, developing protocols to then help move those, gently out of the body. Anything you wanted to say there?
Yeah. And the other thing, there's sort of a double whammy with heavy metals, because not only is it stored in the fat cells and helps, it prevents us from losing weight, but the heavy metals interfere with our ability for our thyroid to work right. Right. And so if our thyroid isn't working right because there's heavy metal interference and it can't make thyroid hormone the way that it needs to, then of course our whole metabolism is sort of being muted, being sort of shut down on low power mode. And so it's this double whammy that happens if we've got metals and other toxins. And it's a funny thing. It's like we think of heavy metals. Well, I don't have heavy metals, but come to find out it's in our daily life all over the place, right? So we've got copper pipes, or there's lots of copper in swimming pools, and we've got aluminum everywhere in our kitchen, right? With our baking sheets, or our aluminum foil, or our nonstick cookware. And so we sort of pick up these things all over the place. It's in our food sometimes, right? And so there's a lot of heavy metal exposure going on in a lot of places. And a lot of times we don't know. Birth control is yet another one of them. We see a lot of copper toxicity going on for people who have been on birth control. Even if it was, as little as 6 months, anything more than 6 to 12 months, and we tend to see some amount of copper buildup in the body.
That was the case for me.
Me too.
Yeah. And so sleep, this is something that we work with our couples on for months. So sleep hygiene. And many people say that, they'll tell me the fertility diagnosis. And oh, by the way, I've always struggled with sleep. I've had insomnia, or I wake up in the middle of the night, or I just can't fall asleep. And all of that is then impacting, your blood sugar the entire next day. So you kind of get going on that whole cycle that just keeps going and going. And then shorter sleep correlates with, increased obesity, hypertension, other metabolic disorders. And it's like, we all have that kind of, maybe the FOMO, like fear of missing out. And, oh, wait, I got to stay up late, watch that show. As Justine says, don't watch cliffhangers. I'm like, geez, I seem to watch a lot of cliffhangers. And then you get like caught watching this thing, even though it's like some little romantic thing that I watch. But yeah, it's interesting where to have those really strong, like sleep, hygiene to help on that. And, it does take a little bit of time, but you can really, once you optimize your sleep, it's like the cornerstone of good health and optimal fertility. And in this case, helping you lose weight. What's your take there?
Yeah, like you said, it causes, when we don't get enough sleep, it causes this blood sugar imbalance to happen. It has a pretty big impact on the next day. And I've seen it quite a lot with clients, especially if they're doing some glucose testing on their own at home, that if they get a crummy night's sleep, their blood sugar is all out of whack the next day. And when our blood sugar is out of whack, guess what? Our body is sending us all these signals to reach for the carbs all day long. And so it makes us more hungry, right? So we sort of miss the signals for satiation. And it makes us hungry, especially for the sweets and the carbohydrates. And so it really just throws everything off. And again, back to the toxins, right? Our body and our brain can't dump toxins the way that it's supposed to during the night if we don't get long enough and deep enough sleep. And, of course, we can preach all day long about you should get better sleep. And I know for some of you, it's not always just an easy thing. You can't just flip a switch and decide you're going to get more sleep. In some cases, there's different kinds of insomnia that are at play. But what we can tell you is that there's hope there. Absolutely. Because if we're able to make some improvements with the gut, and we're able to find out what food sensitivities are, and we're able to, help nourish the body and give it the nutrients that it's missing, which we can absolutely find in a mineral test. We can see what you're missing. If we're able to sort of give the body the nourishment it's looking for, sleep tends to just really start to improve in really big ways for people, which then of course improves all the blood sugar issues and the sweet cravings and the wanting to reach for food constantly. I know it's easier said than done, but it does get better.
And even adding in some magnesium, either they have those magnesium drinks you can have before bed, or just adding some magnesium form of supplements to your regimen there. That's one of so we have our basic supplements for both male and female fertility, because 85% of us are deficient in magnesium. And that's one of our recommendations. And that alone can help with all the muscle cramps. And I find when I have one of those drinks, like those magnesium drinks, you have to watch, you don't have too much of it because then it can have loose stools, but I have that. And then also doing an Epsom salt bath, like that, that's like a coma. Like that is like, bye-bye, I am out. And I did one of those float tanks, and I literally, you're covered in salt and all that stuff that went in my ears and all that. But that night was like, wow, I was gone. And I sleep pretty good as it is, but it's interesting where you're like just out.
For me, it's the magnesium spray on my feet at night. Yeah. And then I'm sort of high maintenance about it, right? Like you can't travel without it. I've had to throw a bottle away at the airport because I forgot, it was too big of a bottle of liquid.
Yeah, I just ran out of mine. I have the from Ancient Minerals there. You can check it out in our Fab Fertile store, and the link is in the show notes. But you can get the Ancient Minerals there, and it's this little lotion I put on the bottoms of my feet. I'm like, I got my blue light blocking glasses, the sleep mask, this like foot lotion, and then the drink. I'm like, God, I look like a maniac, but but I sleep like the dead. So it's good because so many people struggle with this, and it's it's really not a laughing matter. I'm like laughing here, but for people, if you can't sleep, it just impacts your whole entire life.
Yeah. And I can tell you, I used to have really, really crummy sleep. I slept maybe 4 to 5 hours a night total. And a lot of nights it was 2 or 3 hours. And that 2 or 3 hours was broken up into 20 or 30 segments. I literally slept, like 10 to 20 minutes at a time because my sleep was so crummy. But once I started to make some changes to diet and lifestyle, the sleep just started to come. And the way that I sleep now, I mean, I can't tell you what I would have given to be able to sleep the way that I do today.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. What's your take on many people that are like dealing with extra weight? They perhaps may not even, it's interesting when you look to see what people are eating, and some people may just have like one meal a day. It's like, nope, I'm not even hungry. Like just wait until dinner, like nothing all day long, maybe a few coffees, maybe some water, but almost fasting that entire day. What's your take on fasting? And then that whole, like you're like the body's cue of not even giving you a cue that you're hungry.
Yeah. There's a lot going on here, and it's different for every person. But so fasting can be really beneficial for some people, and it can be really disastrous for other people.
Right.
So it really depends on what your blood sugar is doing and how your blood sugar is balanced. It depends on how much food your body actually needs to sustain itself in a day. There's such a thing as sort of, I'm not sure if there's a term for it. I guess I would call it sort of learned starvation, but where our bodies, sort of our stomachs shrink, right? The less we eat, the more our stomachs shrink. And so if you start this pattern of eating only once a day, our bodies, even though it knows we need more food, it starts to become used to that so that you don't experience the discomfort of being hungry all the time. And I've certainly seen this in clients before where they're trying so hard to lose weight and they're really staying strong and working their tail off with the willpower, but they get themselves down to one meal a day. And after a while, that becomes comfortable, when in reality, they're only eating 700 or 800 calories in a day, and the size of their body requires them to eat 1,500 or 2,000 calories in a day. And so essentially it's just sort of this starvation mode. And at some point, we can fast for a little while. Short fasting tends to be beneficial for a lot of people. Again, if your blood sugar holds out for it. But at some point, your body recognizes it as starvation, essentially. And again, it goes into that low power mode where it lowers our metabolism, lowers our thyroid in order to lower our metabolism so that it lowers our burn rate, so that we're conserving vitamins and minerals. And in the end, it thwarts our ability to lose weight. And so I tend to find in a lot of cases, if people start eating more, they don't gain weight. Mm-hmm. And in some cases, they actually, it starts to move the needle again, and they start to lose weight again, even though they're eating more than they were when their weight was holding steady.
Yeah, it sounds counterintuitive, but we've seen it over and over again. Okay, so the next one we have is stress. So research is showing that chronic stress can contribute to obesity for several reasons. If you're stressed, you're more apt to reach for comfort foods, and then also then that can also impact your cortisol levels. So can you talk about kind of there's like that stress eating, right, where you're like, oh my goodness, your default is stress, and the comfort piece for you is like, oh wait, I need to visit the refrigerator in the middle of the night. I've never really done that. Like that's a blood sugar thing though. Like if you're waking up at 2 a.m. and you're like going to the fridge, like what do you think of that?
That is absolutely a blood sugar issue. Yeah. Or major mental emotional stress, right? If you've got something that's woken you up and food is your source of comfort. But if your belly is telling you I'm hungry and we need something to eat right now in the middle of the night, that's absolutely a blood sugar imbalance.
Or people like sleepwalking to the refrigerator. Like, oh my goodness, they didn't even know they've been eating like a huge like sandwich in the middle of the night, and they were sleepwalking. So my dad for years he still will do it. He'll thrash around in the middle of the night and he like sleep talks, and then he's like sleepwalking. And I'm like, my mother's always like, oh, he's gonna, fall somewhere and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, he did it for years. He would like, crash down the stairs because he was walking all over the place. I think he had sleep apnea, but anyway, he's 81, so he's going to do what he wants. But let's talk about the stress piece and how that impacts weight.
Yeah, so stress raises our cortisol. Cortisol is our stress hormone, and when that happens, the body believes that we've got a lot of stress going on. It's the same thing as with the thyroid, right? Your body says, okay, there is stress. Stress equals danger. Stress equals a threat to our safety. And we want to hang on to our reserves, right? Because we don't know if it's going to be a harsh winter, if if the opposing tribe burned down our crops for the season, when we think back to more primitive times. And ultimately, so your body wants to hang on to weight. It's intentionally hanging on to weight if stress levels are high. And so it seems like a goofy thing or this woo woo concept, right? If I've got stress at work because my boss is being a punk, why would that make me gain weight? But that's really how it works, is the body interprets that stress as a threat to our safety. And so it's doing the best it knows how to do, which is to store some belly fat in order to make sure that we've got reserves to draw from if we need them down the road.
I guess the piece around here with our emotions and weight loss, like many times, again, that comfort food, we may feel, it's interesting, we may feel lonely or we need to talk to someone. And instead of reaching out to someone, we may reach out to for food. Or so it is to really kind of clue in there to your habits and your patterns. Like in the times of stress, what do you do and what do you really need? Like, are you lonely? Are you feeling sad? What would actually help you better than reaching for a food that's not gonna serve you? And I guess like there is that, we talked about the willpower, so it's not always about willpower, right? If you've got blood sugar issues going on, but then the mental emotional stuff, being able to first of all see your patterns and see what it is you deep down really need in that moment. And often it's not you're not hungry. It might just be like, I know for me there's a little bit like at the end of the day I'm like, ooh, I'm done what I need to do now, and now I want to relax, and so now I want my special treat. And I'm like, does my special treat need to be like a big bag of chips? Sometimes it does. Other times I'm like, no, it can be like a little plum or some fruit. But yeah, it's interesting to kind of see you get stuck in these habits, right? And how is that serving you? And are you really hungry, or is it you're using food as a reward? And that might have been something that you grew up with that way. So it's to kind of examine those sort of things. What's your take?
Yeah. I actually was just talking with a client about this yesterday. When you're looking for a snack, right? Your instinct is, okay, I need a snack. The question is, are you hungry? Yes or no, right? And if you are hungry, well, then have the snack, right? You should have the snack. But if you're not hungry, if you realize, okay, I'm eating because I'm bored or because I'm stressed or because whatever, one of those other reasons, then the question, like you said, Sarah, is what is it you really need in that moment? What is causing the stress? And is there something else that might serve that need, right? So a hug from your partner, or cuddling with your kiddo, or you're going for a walk, or doing some stretching, or doing some yoga, or doing some meditation, or a phone call with your best friend, or, sort of any of those things that sort of feed your soul and give you the reward and the comfort you're looking for. And in some cases, this goes way, way back, right? So, if you had a challenging childhood for whatever reason, right? Food was always there as our source of comfort, whereas sometimes people weren't, right? And so we learned like the only person we can really count on 100% is ourselves and food, right? Food never asks for anything. Food never gets mad at us. Food never punishes us. Food is always there. It's always, it's sort of our best friend in some ways. It was part of our coping mechanism at some point in our lifetime. And that sticks with us. And so it's natural that we turn to food, and for other reasons too, right? We use food to celebrate everything in our lives, every birthday, every holiday, everything. We use food as a way to celebrate. So food is for all of us, I would say, is really a big source of comfort. And so again, in that moment, it's what else might give me that comfort, right? So the cuddles or even just vegging out, turning your brain off a little bit and watching The Bachelor or whatever. Whatever you need to do in order to sort of give yourself the rest you need and the relaxation you need and the comfort you need, with something that isn't food, if that's an option for you.
Yeah, that whole being fulfilled thing. And it's like, is that really, you're filled with food, but are you fulfilled? And so other things like, reaching out for connection. Many times during this fertility journey, we pull away from those that we love because it's sometimes too painful to be around them if they have families, or if there's, people are if they're pregnant, it can be really painful. But we really need that connection. So to reach out to like a few people and see how that kind of helps with, because there could be a lack of connection. You could be feeling lonely. And, as seemingly everyone sort of moves on with their life, and you may be feeling stuck. So it is to just really recognize those emotions. They're all completely normal. Let's just talk about, so like the tracking macros and calories. What's your take there, and what do we need to do?
Yeah, so like we talked about earlier, it's not always about calories in and calories out and eating less and exercising more. It's more about sort of taking care of your body in a nice way, making sure that you're getting the nutrients that you need, and that we're avoiding the things that cause stress on your body as much as we can. But in some cases, it actually is useful to do a little assessment, right? To take a look at how much am I eating in a day, and am I getting the right balance of fats and proteins and carbohydrates? For most of the people we work with, this is never even a topic we need to talk about in a lot of cases, because if we just sort of, take the stress off the body, a lot of times the weight just starts to fall off. But if you've tried all the things, right, and you haven't made the progress you've wanted to, sometimes it helps just to sort of check in. And what I usually suggest is just to track what you've eaten just for a couple of days. So how many calories did you hit, and how many grams of fats and proteins and carbohydrates, just to sort of do a check-in and see where you land, right? So are you under eating by a lot? Are you overeating by a lot? Is the majority of your food coming from carbohydrates? And if it is, then it's a really sort of eye-opening activity to be able to see, like, okay, wait a minute, for my weight, for my height and weight, I should be eating, say, 1,600 calories a day. And it looks like I'm really only getting like 1,100. Maybe my body is in starvation mode, and I actually do need to eat more calories in order to be able to lose weight. And so, we try not to dwell on this too much, right? The last thing we want to do is for someone to count every single thing they eat all day, every day, forever, right? That is not a healthy behavior. But just a quick check-in to see, like, okay, which, do we need to tweak it just a little bit from where sort of our baseline is if we aren't measuring.
And as part of our Fab Fertile Method, we include a food journal. So you can do a daily food journal, and then really seeing a lot of it is how you feel physically and emotionally after eating. Sometimes we don't even know, like, oh, wait a minute, after that, I felt super cranky, or after that, I had my stomach hurt, or after. And sometimes it's just like the end of the day, oh, we have these like aches and pains. And as we get older, we think our body's supposed to be more creaky and painful. Not the case. So as you really tune into how food makes you feel, you'll then be able to correlate it back to really your health and, ultimately your fertility as well.
Yeah. And that's really incredibly valuable. We see, it's very obvious to see a pattern after we've tracked for a handful of days to go, oh, wow, every afternoon after you have coffee, you feel anxious.
Yeah.
Or, every morning after you have a bagel for breakfast, you're immediately hungry again, an hour later. And so it's really easy to see those patterns if we've done tracking for a handful of days.
Funny, with my son the other day, I was like, okay, dude, like because he's 17 and he's, he'll have an energy drink. And I'm like, I know when you have these energy drinks that you're so excited, and then you get so cranky and so shaky. And he's like, oh, that's not true, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, and then the other day he was like, you know what? When I have that, he finally was able to it must have been some sort of truth moment. He came in and he was like, oh yes, when I have that, I just don't feel right. But it's interesting because many of the times we have these foods and even though I can, tell someone else, kind of show them their pattern, and not until they can actually see it themselves. He's like, oh, when I have some of these chips that have dairy in it, I feel really stuffy, so I can't have a lot of it. I'm like, yeah. Yes, the teenage boy. Anyways, great. So any final thoughts on weight?
Yeah, so again, it's not, weight is not always our fault, right? And if you've done all the things, if you've made changes and the weight is still hanging on for you, it's not a moment to lose hope. There is definitely still hope. It's about sort of taking care of the body in all the ways it needs. And sometimes it's hard for us to know what those ways are. And that's why we always recommend, reaching out to a program that sort of has the tools of the trade to be able to find the imbalances that are going on the inside that are having an impact on weight.
Yeah. So with the Fab Fertile Method, taking that really mind, body, spirit approach and really addressing the biochemistry as well as mindset and spirit, spiritual things, our limiting beliefs and things we have around food and how that really is impacting you. It's all, wrapped up together. So thanks again, Justine, for coming on and sharing your words of wisdom.
Thanks, Sarah.
I regularly speak with 5 to 10 couples per week who are struggling to have their baby. And although we want to help everyone, we only have 4 spots available per month to work with us. I would like to invite you and your partner to a Supercharge Your Fertility Discovery Call. And this call is for you if you meet at least one of these criteria. You've been trying to get pregnant for at least 2 years. You've been through at least one failed IUI or IVF. This calls for action takers. If you're not ready and you wait, the risk is you'll need to wait 2 to 3 months for a spot to open up. If you're seriously considering working with us, go to Fab Fertile, F-A-B Fertile, and click on Book a Free Call. That's Fab Fertile, F-A-B Fertile, and click on Book a Free Call. Then you'll be all booked in and ready to spend 30 minutes to give you the action plan to getting pregnant naturally. Melatonin is important for female fertility. It helps regulate hormones and maintain the body's circadian rhythms. Plus, it helps determine the frequency and duration of the menstrual cycle. Plus, it impacts sperm count and motility. Blue and green light negatively impact our melatonin production. That's why we recommend Blue Blocks, blue and green light sleep glasses to all our one-to-one clients. Simply go to Blue Blocks, BLUBLOX.com, and use the coupon code GETPREGNANT podcast at checkout to receive your 15% discount. That's BlueBlocks, BLUBLOX.com, and use the coupon code GetPregnantPodcast. The Get Pregnant Naturally podcast, including show notes and links, provides information with respect to healthy living, nutrition, lab testing, and is intended for informational purposes only. The information provided is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, nor is it to be construed as such. We cannot guarantee that the information provided on the Get Pregnant Naturally podcast reflects the most up-to-date medical research. Information is provided without representation or warranties of any kind. Please consult a qualified physician for medical advice and always seek the advice of a qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding your health and nutrition program.